Let me ask you something. You're playing in the biggest game of your life, you've got momentum, your crowd is electric, and then nothing. Dead air. You're standing in the batter's box, bat in hand, locked in, and the guy on the other side of the field is taking his sweet time getting to the mound. Taking his time stretching, loosening up, walking around like he owns the place. And the umpires? They're just letting it happen. How do you think that sits with you? How do you think that sits with your whole team watching from the dugout? That's exactly what went down at Rogers Center on Wednesday night when the Toronto Blue Jays squared off against the Los Angeles Dodgers in the final game of their 3-game series. And yeah, Toronto picked up the win, 4-3. They avoided the sweep. But the story coming out of that game isn't just about the W. It's about something that's been building under the surface for a while now. And it finally boiled over in a way that everybody saw. Shohei Ohtani. One name. That's it. That's the whole situation. Now look, I'm not here to pile on Ohtani. The guy is arguably the most gifted baseball player on the planet. Two-way superstar, hitter, pitcher, the kind of player that comes around once in a generation, maybe once ever. But with that rare talent comes a unique situation that other teams are getting increasingly frustrated with. And the Blue Jays made it crystal clear on Wednesday night that they're not just going to sit back and let it slide without saying something. Here's what happened. Top of the first inning, Ohtani comes up to bat. He draws a walk, gets on base, the inning plays out. Normal baseball. Then the half inning flips, and now it's Ohtani's turn to pitch. That's where things got interesting. That's where the tension crept in. Because Ohtani didn't even make his way to the mound to start warming up until there were fewer than 60 seconds left on the 2-minute clock. 60 seconds out of 2 full minutes. He waited until there was barely a minute left before he even stepped out there to start loosening his arm up. And that alone might have been manageable if it had just stayed there. But it didn't. The timer got extended for him. The clock that every other pitcher in baseball has to follow. That 2-minute clock that was put in place as part of the pace of play rules to keep the game moving. For Ohtani. And the Blue Jays saw that. Every single guy in that dugout saw that. George Springer saw it too. And George Springer did something about it. The Blue Jays' leadoff man, instead of stepping into the batter's box and just eating it, walked out of the on-deck circle and went straight to home plate umpire Dan Merzel. He had something to say, and it doesn't take a genius to figure out what the conversation was about. Springer wasn't up there asking about the weather. He wasn't up there making small talk. He was there because his team had an issue and somebody needed to voice it. The Blue Jays weren't going to stay quiet, and Springer was the one who stepped up and made sure that point was communicated. Now here's the thing about the extended warm-up situation, and why this isn't just a Toronto problem. This isn't the first time we've seen a team have a problem with this. This is not breaking news. Last season, during the World Series, Game 7, the biggest game of the year, Blue Jays manager John Schneider was caught on camera having the exact same conversation with umpire Jordan Baker, the World Series, Game 7, and Schneider was still out there airing his grievances about Ohtani getting extra time between innings. That tells you everything you need to know about how deep this frustration runs and how long it's been festering. So what's the actual rule here? The 2-minute clock is there to keep things moving. Pitchers are supposed to be ready, hitters are supposed to be in the box, and the game is supposed to maintain a certain tempo. That's the whole point of the pace of play initiative. But the rule also gives umpires discretion. And that discretion is what's being applied when Ohtani is involved, particularly in situations like Wednesday night, where he was on the bases in the first half of the inning before he had to go pitch in the second half. The logic is that he just ran the bases, he needs a bit more time to transition and get his arm ready. There's some fairness in that argument, and Dave Roberts, to his credit, acknowledged the whole thing. Dodgers manager, he didn't dodge the question when reporters brought it up after the game. He said point blank that he understood the Blue Jays were frustrated. He said, yeah, he gets it. If you're on the other side, you want to treat him like any other pitcher. You want the clock to run, you want pressure on him, you want him rushed. But Roberts also made the point that Ohtani is different. He's not just a pitcher. He's not just a hitter. He's both. And the rules, as they currently stand, give umpires the ability to use judgment in those situations. Roberts called it grace. That the umpires are trying to give Ohtani grace, given the uniqueness of what he does. But here's where I need to push back on that a little bit, because grace is fine in theory. Nobody's arguing that Ohtani doesn't have a physically demanding role. Running the bases and then immediately having to go pitch is legitimately difficult. That's not the debate. The debate is about consistency and fairness, because if those rules are being applied differently for one player, even if that player is the most extraordinary talent in the game, then you're creating a two-tiered system, and the teams on the other side of that are going to have a problem with it. They should have a problem with it. The Blue Jays had every right to voice their frustration on Wednesday. Roberts also gave us a look at his real-time reaction when Springer walked up to the umpire. Because while Roberts was measured and reasonable when talking to reporters after the game, in the moment, he was visibly frustrated. You could see it. The Dodgers bench boss didn't love the fact that Toronto was challenging the situation. And look, that's human. That's competitive. Nobody wants to hear the other team complaining about your best player getting a little extra time. But it tells you that everybody in this situation had emotions running high over something that should have a clear-cut answer. And what happened with Ohtani on the mound after all of this? He was solid. 6 innings, 1 run, 1 walk, 2 strikeouts. He wasn't dominant, but he was effective. He did what good pitchers do. He gave his team a chance to win. At the plate, he went 0 for 3 with a walk and 2 strikeouts. Not his best night offensively. The Blue Jays pitching staff did a reasonable job keeping him in check in that regard. But the fact that he went out there and threw 6 innings after all of that pre-game tension and in-game drama says a lot about who he is as a competitor. Toronto, for their part, got the job done. 4-3, avoided the sweep. And honestly, after the way this series started, getting dominated in the first 2 games, coming away with a win in Game 3, and some fire in your belly heading into the next series is not the worst thing that could have happened. There's something to be said for a team that doesn't just roll over, that gets into a competitive back and forth with the defending champs, and finds a way to scratch out a victory. But let's talk about what this really means going forward. Because this Ohtani warm-up situation isn't going away. It's not. As long as he's a two-way player, and there's no indication that's changing anytime soon, this is going to come up again and again. Every team that faces the Dodgers and has Ohtani pitch after he's been on the bases is going to deal with this. And the question becomes, at what point do Major League Baseball and the Umpires Union put together an actual standardized policy for this? At what point does someone sit down and say, okay, here's exactly how much additional time a two-way player gets. Here are the conditions under which the clock gets extended. And here's how we make sure every team in baseball knows what to expect. Right now, it's all discretion. And discretion is fine until it isn't. Discretion is fine until it creates a situation where teams feel like they're being treated unfairly, where the rules are being bent for one player, and where the only recourse a team has is to send their leadoff hitter out to argue with an umpire before the game even really gets going. That's not a great look for anyone. It's not a great look for the umpires. It's not a great look for the league. And even though Ohtani himself isn't doing anything wrong, he's just trying to get ready to pitch, it ends up creating unnecessary controversy around him too. The Blue Jays made a statement Wednesday night, not just by winning the game, but by refusing to accept the situation without pushing back. George Springer walked up to that umpire and said, "Hey, we see what's happening here, and we're not okay with it." John Schneider's been saying it since the World Series last year. This franchise has a voice, and they're using it. You can agree with them or disagree with them, but you can't say they're wrong to raise the issue. They're competing in the same game under the same rules, or at least they should be. Now the Blue Jays are moving on. Minnesota Twins coming to Rogers Center for a 3-game set starting Friday. Fresh series, fresh start, new opportunity to build on what they showed in that final Dodgers game. The momentum from a win like Wednesday's is real. The energy that comes from standing your ground against the best team in baseball and walking away with a victory. That matters. That carries over. But this Ohtani situation is going to follow the conversation around the league all season long. And honestly, it should, because it's a legitimate question that deserves a real answer. Not grace. Not umpire discretion. A real, defined, transparent answer about how baseball handles the most unique player in the sport. Until that answer comes, you're going to keep seeing teams step out of the on-deck circle and have those conversations at home plate. And the Blue Jays already showed you they won't be the last ones to do it.